Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Aaronworth, signing on to the sign-off of Frameworth podcast for yet another week. It is the forum for all the stories you didn't know you wished you knew about the world of sports and sports marketing. I am joined in studio once again. It's good to have you back. Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing. Brian Aaronworth, as I always say as well, Dad, how are you doing this day? You skipped a week on us.
I went fishing.
Went fishing. There you go. Good excuse. I was thinking maybe you'd make up something a little bit more exciting. I was down watching the playoffs or something.
Well, I was from up there.
Oh, from up there. Yeah. Streaming. That's you go up to the cottage.
I actually went out to Edmonton as a guest of Wayne Gretzky.
Right.
And did,
okay. I've heard of him. Yeah.
And we saw the last game that Edmonton lost and had breakfast with Wayne.
Did he blame you for the loss there, or is he impartial now? That
well, he's critical, a lot more critical when you're talking one-on-one than he would be on the air because he's doing the TNT broadcast.
Of course, yeah.
We had breakfast together with Paul Coffey and Rick Tocchet and had a great conversation, and always great to get some insight from the great one. Yeah.
Some classic Brian Aaronworth name drops at the top of the episode. You can't get enough of those things. And I can't wait to drop the name of our guest who's waiting in the wings. So without further ado, our guest today has played professional hockey all over the world between the KHL, ECHL, AHL, as well as the UHL for Frameworth's favorite team, the Danbury Trashers. During his playing career, he developed a following based on his penchant for punches and his simultaneously menacing yet endearing ability to flash a smile in the middle of a fight. You just saw him as a judge for the groundbreaking Ice Wars prize fighting tournament and as a mercenary hockey enforcer named Jim, who shoots one-liners faster than his fists on the new hit show Shoresy. Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Mirasty. Jon, how you doing today?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. An interview that my dad's been.
I've been looking forward to this. Yeah.
So
I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but listening to your guys' Oilers talk there, and I loved every minute when they lost. This is Oiler land here too.
Who's your team that maybe not left in the playoffs? Obviously, we only got two left, but who are you usually cheering for?
I was actually rooting for Calgary, to be honest, but there's in the last Final Four teams, I had a few buddies on every team, so I was actually kind of cheering for the New York Rangers. But obviously Tampa Bay took them out, and then you go to Tampa Bay. I got a couple of guys that put it there, like Patrick Maroon and Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough. Played with a lot of those guys in Russia in the KHL.
Oh wow, okay.
But I'm rooting for Colorado this one. I think Colorado's going to win it.
Yeah, so am I.
Last night, so.
It was looking a little bit. I mean, we're recording the day after the first episode, so this will be out. There will be a few more games in between now and then by the time that this episode launches. But game one looked pretty good for Colorado in the first period, 3-1, and then a quick couple goals by Tampa. It's got to be scary playing against either of those teams with the amount of firepower they have. It's just there's no relaxing in the middle of it. But we're not here to talk about the NHL. We're here to talk about everything in and around. Now, Jon. The introduction that you and my dad had was kind of fascinating. Frameworth got involved with the Danbury Trashers in terms of marketing some of their memorabilia and their signed jerseys and things like that. And as a result, my dad started to get in touch with some of the players. Dad, why don't you take the reins and talk about how you
actually, what happened was you had told me about watching the Trashers documentary, and let me actually just clarify the Danbury Trashers. If you've listened to this podcast before, you definitely know who they are. If this is your first episode that you're tuning into, they have a documentary all about them on Netflix. It's called Untold: Crime and Penalties, about the Danbury Trashers. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's worth pausing this episode if you haven't seen it and going and taking a look. It's a story that is so good that people accuse it of being made up, even though it's not. We know that for a fact. So continue. So what ended up happening was Brent Gretzky had called me and said that they wanted to reissue
another
jerseys.
Gretzky name drop. What is going on with you? Okay.
First captain, and it was all in the marketing strategy. And so he said he wanted my advice, and I said, about what? And he said, Danbury Trashers. I said, who the hell are Danbury Trashers?
Right.
Then I found out about the documentary, saw the documentary, immediately called AJ Galante and said, I want some rights to these jerseys. I think they're going to be highly marketable.
Right.
And then Ken Reed, another name drop from Sportsnet, a friend of mine, came into the office to do some framing, and I was talking to him about the possibility of Danbury Trashers, and he's all over it. Ken loves fighting in hockey.
Yeah.
One of those guys that loves fighting in hockey. Don't remove it.
Jon's not so much a fan of fighting in hockey, actually. He thinks it should be abolished.
It belongs here, boys.
So what Ken said to me was, he says, I told him some of the guys that I wanted to approach. He says, "You're missing the best one." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "This guy wasn't in the documentary, but is a legendary enforcer, one of the best ever." And he said, "Jon Nasty Mirasty." And I said, "Wow." I said, "How do I get a hold of him?" And he says, "Well, whatever you do, talk to AJ, get a hold of him." And so
you don't get a hold of him. He gets a hold of you. I've seen the videos on YouTube. Yeah.
So that's when I contacted Jon, and I can't tell you how much fun it is working with all of these guys, but Jon in particular. I phone him, and 2 minutes later, I get a call back. We're talking all the time about things. So Jon, take it from there. I mean, I'm thrilled to be dealing with you guys, and you've been a big help marketing the jerseys, et cetera, all so far.
How has, like, we will get into this, Jon. We'll get into your time with Danbury. Also, I want to talk about your time on the new hit show, as I mentioned in the intro on Shoresy. I want to get a little bit more about you, though, just to paint sort of a picture for our fans who aren't as familiar. And my dad brought up an interesting point there. He called you an enforcer. Some people call you a fighter. We've also kind of played around with this term goon. We've used it on the podcast before and thought of it as sort of an endearing term. What are your thoughts on that? The word goon, is that something you like going by, or would you prefer enforcer?
Oh, I'm a guy that doesn't get his feelings hurt. I told you earlier, I'm old school, so whatever you want to call me Indigenous, you want to call me Indian, I don't care. But I think goon is kind of more of a negative word, I think, just because it doesn't, but to me, I don't really care. I did it. I loved it. Wouldn't change a thing that I did. And, it made me who I am today. You always talk about these enforcers, and when they say the word goon, you think of an animal or a guy that just wants to hurt people. But to be honest, some of the enforcers or the goons of the teams that I've played for or against are always some of the best character guys in the dressing room. They give back to the youth. They do a lot of charity events, and like I said, myself to this day, I still do a lot of work with the youth, and with my home community of Flying Dust First Nation. We're always out there to try inspire and help these younger. With today's society, I think we're struggling. I think not just on the First Nation communities, but just life in general. So it's nice to get out there and try play a positive role for the youth to push for their dreams. I'm an example. I grew up on a First Nation reserve, and both my parents divorced. I had that whole story, and I still, I like to think that I succeeded pretty well. As you said earlier, I'm a man of many trades. I retired from hockey and opened a Tim Hortons franchise. Right. Sold that. Do a lot of leadership things in my community. Try set an example. Push our youth to the limits so they can succeed and leave the negative lifestyles that some of them are gaining, and just going forward, and also run an equine program for our youth, not just youth, but I guess everybody, addictions, family building. I have a ranch with about 26 horses. I'm slowly building into my cattle. I'm not really much of a cattle guy.
Moving to cattle, yeah.
Moving to cattle, yeah. And then, like you said earlier, ended up getting a phone call to be one of the actors in the new hit Shoresy, which was a pretty new and exciting adventure for myself. So just turned 40 about a week ago, and chasing new dreams, I guess.
I was going to say, it feels like a rebirth. It's like things are starting again for you at 40, which is positive, because I'm getting close, and I think I'm going to need a couple new restarts if I want to make something of myself. So I'll use you as an example. A lot to touch on there. You mentioned the Tim Hortons, and we don't have to get too much into it, but I know that once you had sold, you had cited some health concerns. Are you turning a corner on those? Are things looking a bit better for you there?
100%. At that time, we didn't really know what was going on, but I've kind of figured it out now. I'm a very OCD person. I guess I shouldn't use the word OCD, but I'm a perfectionist. Like, I want to do everything my way. Yep. And I couldn't turn the light switch off. Obviously a Tim Hortons franchise is 24 hours. Yeah. And you need to be able to learn to delegate jobs. And I was a guy that just, when we first opened, I couldn't do that. Like, I wanted to clean bathrooms. I wanted to count money. I wanted to do everything, right. And that's impossible. So I basically wore myself down. I went from being a 240 pound muscled up guy to about 175 pounds because I didn't know how to shut it off, right. Wow. I was going home at 11 at night, and by 3 a.m, I was already ready to go back. And all at that time wasn't really eating because I was just so busy and trying to get into it. And like I said, I didn't know how to step back a little bit and watch. So it wore down on me pretty physically and mentally, but, now that I got new things on the go, it's worked out a lot better. And in the long run, it worked out well for us. So
tough to lose weight in a Tim Hortons.
Oh yeah.
Well, let me tell you this: I don't really enjoy the food. Once you're in there. Every day
I hear you at a restaurant.
Close.
Same thing.
Yeah, you mentioned there were two things that you wanted to do there. You said counting money and cleaning bathrooms. There's one of those things that I'd want to do. So if you're looking for someone to take something off your plate, pretty good at counting money. I don't have a lot of it to count, so doesn't take me much time. You also mentioned the horses, and I got a question for you. What hurts more, a punch in the head from an opponent or a kick in the head from a horse? Because from what I understand, you've had both at some point in your life.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, those 2-year-olds kick pretty damn hard. My wife's a nurse at the hospital, and if I get kicked by one of them, I'll be going to see her. But I've been kicked a few times. I think once in the head, I got it in the head, but mostly in the chest or the legs, and they hit a lot harder than a human. Let's tell you.
I would imagine that. Yeah, and they're maybe not playing by the same rules. Plus, they're typically not on ice, so I think you'd have a little bit more leverage there on them in that case. I've actually, speaking of this, I wanted to get into this a little bit later, but you have a plethora of YouTube videos and a big database on hockeyfights.com. You can go down the rabbit hole and watch a ton of different fights. There was one that I found pretty fascinating, and it'll lead into another question about horses. But do you remember anything about a fight with Francis Lassard in 2010? A little bit of back and forth between the two of you. Something pretty unique I noticed about it is a punch wasn't thrown. You guys looked across from each other. You tried to engage. He kept backing off, similar to David Lacroix in 2017, where you literally chased him down the rink and he kept backpedaling. What is it about you that makes people unwilling to engage? I mean, I think there's probably a pretty easy answer to that, but what are your thoughts on that when that happens?
Oh, I know. I mean, not trying to brag myself up, but I'm a kind of guy you can't really, unless you knock me out cold, you ain't going to beat me because, I don't know how to say it without sounding too cocky.
Sound cocky. That's fine. What are we going to do? Yeah.
I love to fight and I love to get hit. So I think what goes through their minds is no matter how hard I hit this guy, he's not going to, turn away. And, if you beat me once, I'm going to be coming back after you the next shift. So I think fighting, it's for me, I like to think it was a lose-lose situation for a lot of guys because, it takes a lot to put me down unless your name's Steve Bosse.
That's the one that I noticed there, a kind of a surprise punch. But
and even there, I have people always ask, well, who's the toughest guy you ever fought? And I never like to, pinpoint one guy because whoever has the courage to drop the gloves in, front of 10,000 people. And,
for sure.
And, like I said, it's just one punch away from getting put out. Right. So, but everyone expects me to always say Steve Bosse, but I think if you understand fighting, a lot of styles make fights.
Sure.
And, Bosse kind of had my number a lot. And don't get me wrong, guy's a fucking tank. The guy likes to fight and he's tough. He hits hard. But I was always too proud to fight him smarter. I wanted to go toe to toe and open up and not, I'm not a fan of the guys that hug and wrestle and,
sure.
And, I always wanted to be known as a guy that was going to give it his all, and whether he win or lose, I'm going to put it out there. So, but with Steve, I was too stubborn I'm a much better, stronger guy in my skates than he was, so if I could have easily outsmarted it and grabbed his shoulders and hung on and played it safe, I probably would have never lost a fight against him.
Right.
But I was always wanting to grab right down the middle and let's throw. So,
going out on your shield. Yeah.
I had guys call me and, after those fights, and I've obviously beat him a few times too, the way I wanted to beat him. But, there's guys that would say, why'd you do that when all you had to do was grab his right shoulder? And I just said, no, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. So, but yeah.
I want to touch base too, because you said I'm stronger on my skates. The one thing, and we're going to talk a lot about fighting because and I love talk about fighting because you're one of the few guys that just opens up about it and talks about it, because a lot of guys, they don't want to be associated with it after the fact. You could play hockey. You didn't last all those years by not being able to play the game. So the one thing about the Trashers that you don't pick up as much from the documentary was all these guys that were tough guys could play the game.
For sure.
And so it's not like it was like a complete slap shot bunch of hackers out there that just got in fights all the time. These guys could play hockey.
Did you always know that's how you? I know you took some, I think, boxing as a kid. Did you always know you wanted to be more of an enforcer, or was that just the role you were put into?
To be honest, when I got into hockey at a young age, I was always one of the better players in the province. You know, at the ages, novice, Adam, Pee Wee, even into bantam. And I think it might have hurt me because I got invited to my first junior camp at a really young age. I was 14 years old, and I had a couple older cousins that were already playing, in the minor pros, East Coast Hockey League, the AHL and stuff. And they were both kind of scrappers. And so they didn't have to leave the camp yet. And they were working these camps that I went to, and they were, just trying to line me up with fights when I probably shouldn't have been fighting. Right. And I remember I went to my first camp, and I think I was 14 or 15, and I fought one of the 20-year-old captains, and I actually gave him a licking. Oh. And after that weekend, that tournament, I was called in, and they said, we've never seen a young kid, you fought our toughest guy in the league, and, he's 20 years old and you're still a kid. Didn't even have hair on my balls yet, I don't think. And, so I did well. And next thing you know, I was being, recruited to these teams to be the tough guy. And then you go back to talking about our skill sets, to play at any level of professional hockey, you have to be able to play a little bit, But, of course. So it always rattles you when guys will say, oh, you only had 3 goals last year, but people don't realize that those shifts I'm getting, I'm not trying to score goals. I'm trying to go throw the body or, throw a big hit, get try to change the momentums of the game. I always said, if you gave Sidney Crosby 3 shifts a game, I don't think he's going to have that many points either.
Of course.
But then, an example is I come home, in my upper 30s, and I'm playing senior AAA hockey, which with some good players, a lot of guys played pro, even on our team this year. I had myself, Dwight King, DJ King, Mike Siklink, all guys that have played at really high levels of hockey. And I actually led the league in scoring. So,
hey, there you go.
What does that tell you? Guys say, oh, he was just a fighter, but, you come home and play some good caliber hockey and you're scoring goals. But obviously I loved what I did. I'm not one of these guys that says, oh, they made me do it and I regret it. And I think that's complete bullshit. I actually lose respect for a lot of those guys because they didn't complain when they were in the spotlight. They kind of complained when they retired and said, oh, I'm done now. And I hated fighting and they made me do it. So I don't buy into that. Obviously I'm not here to say, oh, fighting's, completely healthy for you. But at the same time, there's been a lot of tragedies that have happened over the years. And let me tell you, all those guys, they were fighting demons well before they were fighting.
Right.
So I think that there's more to it. I think that, I'm an example of, coming from Russia, playing hockey, doing what I love since I was a kid, making good money, money wasn't an issue. And then, come home, retire, buy a Tim Hortons. And then I'm working 18 hours a day, paying myself, $15 an hour.
Right.
And it's a huge reality change, right? So you do go through that, like, what the fuck am I doing now?
Of course.
I don't think there's enough in hockey for that to prepare for life after hockey.
Yeah.
So I hate when you see these articles that say, oh, he was a fighter and he ended up committing suicide because of fighting. I don't buy into that. Yeah. I buy into the fact that those guys weren't ready for life after hockey. You go from making, $40,000-$50,000 a month to, making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. It's a huge change. And
doing something that you've done your whole life, and then all of a sudden trying to find your ground somewhere else.
I'm a typical Canadian kid. I played hockey since I was 3 or 4 years old, where my whole life from being 3 years old to when I was 30, it was always, hockey, right? My flights were set up for me, my camps were set up for me, my travel was set up for me, and then that all comes to an end, and it's like, okay, well, I got to do this on my own now, and now my own business, man, it's life altering. So I think that's kind of the issues that they need to look at more than actual hits to the head, because they're still allowing guys in the UFC to get kicked in the head and, punch in the head, and it's not really happening there, I don't think.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that there's more issues than hits to the head.
Yeah, we talk about how it's kind of almost recently. I think we had Eddie Mio on not too long ago, and we talked about how, like, the difference that we now see in the NHL alone, which, like, it has to start there and hopefully branch out elsewhere. But the NHLPA coming on board and the alumni and making sure that people are ex-players are properly trained on life after hockey. That's just for the NHL, though. I mean, we do need that infrastructure elsewhere, because there are way more players outside the NHL than inside the NHL, some of whom don't even get to really play pro, even though that's what they're going for. So I think that infrastructure is absolutely necessary. To shift gears a little bit though, you mentioned, leading the league at one point and your play style and how, and the number of minutes that you get. I want to bring this up because I found this kind of fascinating. This year in the NHL, Matt Borowiecki led the league in penalty minutes. He played 57 games and he got 151 penalty minutes. In 2003-2004, playing for the Bakersfield Condors of the ECHL, you played a similar number of games in 56 and ended with 358 penalty minutes. That's more than double, which is amazing. I love that stat. Is that the kind of thing that you wear with a badge of honor, like penalty minutes? I know guys like Ty Domi used to always brag about the number of penalty minutes that they had. Is that something that you kind of wear with a badge of honor there?
Oh, obviously, it was a statistic back then, right? It's just like having a guy having 80 goals, he has 354 penalty minutes, you know what he's doing.
Yes.
I just think the game changed a lot where, like you just said, the guy's name in the NHL, I don't even know who that is. I'll be honest, I don't even really watch the NHL very much anymore. I mean, obviously I follow the playoffs, but I don't think I've watched a game from start to finish in the last 7 or 8 years.
Is that just NHL or hockey in general?
Just hockey in general. I mean, obviously when my son is playing, I go watch and stuff,
sure.
But I don't know. I think it's lost the passion, it'll be 6-0 or 7-0 and there won't be a single fight. Guys are still trying to score goals.
Yeah.
So,
so what you're inferring there is that when a team's getting beat up by 6 or 7-0, somebody's got to step up and change the momentum. And that's where the fighting comes in.
Yeah.
Like
I think a lot of people, the average American, and I shouldn't even say American fan, but the average fan that are against me don't realize that. I remember going up, in a game when I was in New York and it was 3-0, and it's all right. And then I get a tap on the shoulder. And I know what I'm going out there for. I'm going out there to get in a good fight and change the momentum. And people don't realize it works. We might go down 2 or 3 goals right off the bat, and I go get in a really good fight. Next, we tied up 3-3, and that's where a lot of the fighting in hockey belongs. It's to get, you're doing it for your boys, you're doing it to pump the team up. There's other instances too where there's a revenge. Maybe my star player got ran the last game, and when people say, "Oh, they fought off the opening faceoff," it's set up, it's staged. No, you don't know the story to that fight.
Sure.
Maybe the game before, Jeremy Yablonski ran my top goalie or ran my top player, or, maybe bumped into the goalie. So I'm going to start this game and say, hey, you're not going to do that tonight. And
sure.
This is how we're going to go. And then usually the guy that wins that fight, bang, you usually score right after you fight, and it's like you said, it's a momentum changer. So that happens. And, it just keeps players honest, I think. You have a lot of guys now where, every time they get hit, they're looking at their refs, where before they just look at me and I'd go take care of business.
Little mutually assured destruction on either side of the team.
I mentioned this.
Like I said, you don't have that passion anymore, or even like the little scrums after. And I'm not a guy that's trying to promote violence and say, oh, we need to fight. But even just, even playing in Russia, I remember all the Russians would talk about is our Canadian teams, and they didn't talk about our best players. They talked about our third liners, the guys that were crashing and banging, They were so scared of our way of hockey. And I'm not even talking about the fighting. I'm just talking about your fourth and third line grinders that are, wearing the top lines down. And I just think we lost that now. Now we have 4 lines of all skilled European players where, before there was a mixture of everything. You had your top 2 lines where your star players, and then you had your third line where the crashers and bangers, and then you had the fourth line where we're going to go take care of business.
Well, it seems like that's necessary. I mean, you look at the teams that do well in the playoffs, and they always do have that type of depth to them. It just makes you, like, I've always wondered this with the NHL, why the game is so different. There's no other league in the world that I know of, at least, where the regular season is so different than the playoffs. It almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter.
I will admit, like, I love watching the playoffs even now, just because it's a little more gritty. And, like you said, they still have the successful teams like Tampa Bay Lightning. They're obviously almost going to become a dynasty here, and they have Pat Maroon out there. By no means is I played with Pat, and by no means is he a heavyweight scrapper. But hey, guess what? He's playing that role and he's mucking it up, and so I think there's a good mixture to have for that. To make a successful team. And like I said, a lot of guys will play a lot bigger. I have guys. Derek Brassard's a guy that just wrote me on my birthday. And plays for the Edmonton Oilers now, and he's just said thank you for when I played, I felt bigger. I wasn't scared when you're out there because I knew if someone was going to run me, I knew that you were coming up behind me. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. You know what? I mentioned that I was on the phone with Jim Galante this morning, and we were talking about you, and I was just wondering, because there's all those things that come from the documentary where you see him on the cell phone calling the coach, and then tapping, and the coach tapping somebody on the shoulder, and out they go, and there's a fight going on. I mean, there was one incident that I saw that I can remember from the documentary. How much did that happen where the call came from up above and said, look, mix that up? Or did you just do that? You knew when to do it and how to do it on your own?
To be honest, when I was my days in Danbury, I was still really young. I think I was just turned 21. I was just turning into my pro career. So I don't remember it as good as I should, but at the same time, I even think the show didn't do it enough justice. Mm-hmm. But I was fortunate. I can say fortunate enough, obviously, the background of the Danbury Trashers, with the mobster ties and stuff like that. Sure. But that wasn't my first kick of the cat. I was also up in the Quebec League, where it was ran by the bikers for, giving me checks and envelopes or cash and envelopes and stuff. So, and then I also went to Russia my first year, and I was with the Vitesse team, where it was ran by the Russian mob. So, I guess I got my ties to those organizations.
It's on your CV. You're used to working in that sort of realm. That's making you incredibly desirable for the team.
I ain't gonna lie. I have stories I could tell you up the yin yang about those places I played, and Danbury doesn't even top it off. I think Russia's topped it off for me. The stuff I seen there.
Really?
Well, you were telling me a story about Russia coming out of a bar, I think, at one point.
Oh, there's. Well, you're probably talking about the wedding brawl or whatever they said. We beat up a wedding, but it wasn't. And that's where you don't believe social media. We didn't crash a wedding. I think those guys just picked a fight with the wrong guys. But like I said, I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and see so many different cultures, and it was awesome. It created who I am today, and. I could tell you stories all day here long if you wanted to hear about.
Well, let's get into that. To set the stage though, just for Danbury, right? You mentioned you were 20, early 20s when you were there. You spent 2 seasons there. At this point, had you already developed a reputation for being the type of player that you've come to be known as? Like, did AJ seek you out, or did you have to pull a Roman Endure and send him a video and kind of propose that hey, I see what you guys are doing here, I want to take part in it?
I think I can't really recall. I've never sent teams my information, but I know that AJ obviously knew who I was, or I think the videos were out there, and I think what attracted a lot of teams was my smiling. I remember
during the fights.
My very first professional game was in Bakersfield, California, and I was already one of the top fighters in the WHL and fought big names like Derek Bugard and Steve McIntyre, all those guys. And when I got brought, my son was born at that time, and I was quitting hockey and going to university in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And I got a phone call, I think 15 games into the season, and they said, we'd like to bring you into Bakersfield. What do you think? And I remember going to Bakersfield thinking, shit, I'm just a young guy that's going to get his ass kicked, but I'll go fight. I don't care. Here's an opportunity to get my foot in the door. And my very first game, I fought twice. And I remember I was only 20 at that time, and I had beat up 2 of their heavyweights, and I smiled the whole time. And I just remember after the game, I'm just a young kid. And after the game, I got called in the coach's office, and I didn't even know the coach really. I just got there and played that game, and he just looked at me and said, if you can smile every fight like that, he says, I promise you're going to make a lot of money in this game. That goes to tell you what hockey used to be, right? And I mean, absolutely. I think he had a hard on seeing me do that. But, now what I do, I think I'd be frowned upon. But
Was the smiling something that you didn't even notice? Was it like Michael Jordan's tongue coming out? Like it just happened in the heat of everything?
It just happened. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts with guys that I've fought, and they say they love fighting. And I could tell you right now, a lot of those guys didn't love fighting as much as they claim, because there's a few guys I've heard that I've, fought, and I love it, right? I never got into drugs. I was never into drugs, so I think my drug was always hockey fighting. It was, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I'll jump off out of planes, and I'll do whatever you can to get that adrenaline. And I just hear guys saying, I'll fight anyone at any time, any place. And a lot of those guys that I've said that publicly, I laugh because there's times where I fought them and we had good fights. We would go to the penalty box and I'd look over and say, hey, we're going to go again. And they'd say, no, I'm done. So,
I didn't love it that much. Yeah.
I could truthfully say I love fighting. I enjoyed it. Rarely did I ever have a real hatred towards the other guy. I mean, there's a few guys, you brought it up, Frankie Lassard. Back then I didn't care for him. Him and I are really good friends on Facebook now, and we chirp each other back and forth, friendly. But back then I was one of the guys that I couldn't stand. And
oh yeah.
So he was a guy that I wanted to kill. But
was there a respect there still? Because I mean, everyone always talks about that stereotype.
There's always respect. Like I said, anyone that has the balls to drop their gloves in front of, like I said, a bunch of fans, and you're putting it on the line, because I don't care who you are. If you get hit in the right spot, you're going to go down. And, and that always got really hard for me. The older I got, when I was considered one of the tougher guys in the league, you're always scared because everyone wants you to lose because it's big news, right?
Of course.
But you're also expected to win. So it's almost a lose-lose situation for you because you're putting your line out there, and you're going to fight. But if you get beat, then everyone loves it because it's the new news, or the champ got beat.
You're like the big guy in prison that everyone comes. They got to challenge you, right? They got to make a name for themselves. Yeah. But
the game kind of changed. I mean, that's why I laugh now, because when I played, when I was 20 years old, I would beg guys like Bob Probert to fight me, or anyone, any big name. Because even if I was going to lose, I just want to fight them to make my name. And it was weird because when I got older, I mean, young guys would never come and challenge me, right? And it was kind of
was that fear or was that respect? What would that be for?
I think it's just the game's changed. There wasn't as many guys that were built like me, or not just me, just our generation that wanted to make a name for themselves, I remember when I was young, I was going to go to every tough guy there was, even if I was going to get killed, to say, hey, let's go. I just want to have that opportunity to fight you. And then as I got older, I didn't have many guys come and challenge me,
Yeah.
Well, the enforcer's lesser and lesser role in hockey, as you mentioned. And I mean,
prime example was this international ice wars we just had,
Right.
10 years ago, I would have had 15 animals there, guys, but, nothing against the guys now, but a lot of these guys, they're the new generation of tough guys. And, I don't think we had as many big names there as we would have liked.
Can we talk about that? So Ice Wars, for the listener, fascinating new proposition. It was essentially billeted as prize fighting on ice. That was AJ Galante, obviously, the president of the Danbury Trashers. You got to know him very well there. The three judges were ex-Danbury players as well. You had Michael Bialvas, you had yourself, and you had Brad Wingfield. What were getting involved in that? It was basically like MMA gloves. Everything else is as it would be in a small octagon with ice in there. So you couldn't go too far. MMA gloves, helmet. What did you think when you were first positioned or propositioned on being involved in something like this?
Well, at first I was a little worried, because I think they used my name quite a bit to publicize it, and I didn't want it to fail. Do I think it can get a lot better? Yes. I think it was a great start, though. It was really neat. They basically made an octagon like the UFC, but out of hockey boards.
Right.
Probably the exact same size as a UFC octagon. And the thing I didn't like was the synthetic ice, because a guy like me that fights, we talked about our skating before.
Yeah.
I might have not been the greatest skater playing hockey, but I used my skating to my advantage on when you'd fight, right? Like how you switch hands and stuff, you rotate on the ice. And I just found I didn't actually use skates on the synthetic ice, but just watching and viewing the guys on it, it looked a lot more difficult. So I don't know if I'm a big fan of the synthetic ice for the fighting, because like I said, ice really helps me fight.
Of course. And, or at least gives you an advantage. Yeah. Because you know how to manipulate.
Do you think that they'll move to that? I mean, I talked to AJ about it, and the one thing that they had a bit of an issue with, because they want this to be a legitimate sport like MMA. It's not WWF or WWE, whatever they call it now. They want it to be sanctioned by a commission, et cetera. But for the first one, they had a hard time getting all those things in place. So they did it in a casino on a native reserve so that they could get around that to get the thing going. So hopefully, if they can get it more in a natural setting, they can put the real ice in there.
Yeah, well, I talked to Charlie, who's kind of the main guy for the International Ice Wars, and we're actually thinking of bringing it to my home reserve here, which is going to be a much smaller venue. We do have ice all year round here,
right?
So I recommended, using our arena with the real ice, and just covering up half the anything from the blue line. The defensive zones and the blue lines can be all seating and chairs for audience, and then the arena around. But I think for the actual show, it'd be nice to use the natural or the real ice.
Yep. I agree.
And so that's something that we're looking at doing, maybe possibly after this next one. I know, not sure if I'm supposed to announce or not, but I know that they've mentioned about having another show at the River Creek Casino on August 6th. I don't know if it's 100% confirmed, but that's what it's looking at right now. So
there you go. Potential.
I think if I were to make the sport grow, I'd find a way to be doing it on real ice personally. Obviously financially that might be a bit more money for the spot, whoever's funding the event and stuff. But I think it's
I'm trying to get Mikey, AJ to use Mikey as the ring announcer for that. Just like that. All right, let's get ready to rumble.
Well, they've got Sheriff there now. They do have someone a position for that, and he looks like he could take me down pretty easy in a fight. So I don't know if I want to be challenging him. But actually, speaking of taking down in fights, Daniel Amesbury, Diamond Hands, taking away the victory, winning the tournament there. It had incredible. I don't know. I know, John, that you spent a little bit of time trying to get into MMA or seeing what that would be about. I don't know if you've ever seen the original UFC 1, what that tournament was like, but a tournament where people had to fight multiple times. They were kind of figuring it out as they went, and now it's kind of gone down in legend. A very different production from what you have now in UFC. Yeah. So promising in the sense that you can build onto it, but it ended, the Ice Wars ended with you issuing a challenge to Daniel Amesbury that you were going to take part potentially in a grudge match in the next Ice Wars event. You still thinking about lacing up the skates and putting on the gloves for that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, once it's in your fight, it's in your blood, But I got so many things on the go right now. Like I know AJ reached out to me and stuff, just last week, and with this new Shoresy show, those are a lot of my priorities now, and we'll see. Like I said, and then obviously I make a pretty good dollar nowadays, so I'm not going to go fight for, a couple $1,000s. They'd have to make the purse pretty big. Especially in this area, I'm going to be a really big draw. I'm not
for sure.
I'm not no stupid guy. I know that when I go fight, I'm going to bring a lot of fans there. So, it wouldn't be cheap for me to fight, and not trying to be greedy. I just, I know my worth, and
100%.
And if they're willing to step up and give me what I like, then I definitely would. The
bigger the name, it's all streamed too. Yeah. So that's where
the only person I'd have to fight is my wife. She's not big on me fighting anymore. So I think I'd get more of a beating at home than Diamond Hands would give me.
I'd be excited to see it. It was a fascinating event to watch. Some massive human beings taking part in that, and Daniel looked great the whole time. It looked exhausting, especially you're doing multiple fights in a game. As you mentioned, you're playing hockey and sometimes fighting 2-3 times.
It's funny when you say massive though, because I was a little bit disappointed in all the big guys bragging how big they were.
Right. They didn't go as far as you would have expected.
I'm 330 pounds, or I'm 270, I'm 280. And I told my wife, I didn't even know who Daniel Amesbury was, but my wife said, who do you think's going to win? I said, that guy that's 225 will win. And I didn't even know who he was. I'm not saying even his skill set. I just said, because it's not the size of the dog, so I was kind of laughing at all the guys that were saying, oh, I'm going to win because I'm 330. Well, guess what? All that tells me is you're going to gas out in about 5 seconds.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's true. And I think the thing that impressed me about Daniel is I kind of seen a lot of myself in him. He had a lot of fight in him. He didn't give up. I mean, there was a couple times where he got put on his ass and he got back up and kept going. So, but I did warn him that I'm a different breed than those guys he was fighting. So
I'd love to see it, and especially because of the respect he showed at the end. If you're out there listening and you haven't seen it, it was over. I believe on Fight TV was how you could find it. I can correct that
if you go to the Trasher website, DB Trasher website, there's always updates there.
You'll be able to link to that as well. It seems like those 6'4", 6'5" guys, they may have had some faith in themselves. They may have liked to win, but I don't think they hated to lose the way that someone like Shoresy would hate to lose. And that brings us into our next bit of the conversation here. Shoresy, you've kind of gone on the record to say that prior to Shoresy, you weren't much of a TV guy. So you weren't familiar with Jared Kiso. You weren't familiar with Letterkenny and the crazy amount of attention that was getting. someone approached you to be on this show, Shoresy. Our American listeners may not know this. It's a Crave exclusive, I believe. I'm sure it's
big. It's big in the States.
It's big in the States. Yeah.
Oh, it's in Hulu.
I think it's bigger in the States than it is in Canada, to be honest.
You know what? It's funny watching it. I was fascinated because like the amount of specific references to local Canadiana, like local Ontario Canadiana, like they don't know what Wasaga Beach is or why someone got a tugger in there, but whatever. You're having some fun with it. So who approached you? How did they know about you? And were you skeptical at first?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I actually got the call. I think it was May or June of last year. Not a call, sorry, an email, because I work for my First Nation and we make our emails public. So I do get the odd email from a fan or something, that's trying to get a hold of me to
sure.
I get some nice stuff too. Some young fans will write me nice letters, inspiring letters and stuff. But I received an email from one of the main producers. Her name's now she's a great girl. Her name's Kara. And at first, she just said, would you be interested in being part of this TV show? And she just said Letterkenny because obviously Shoresy wasn't even out yet. So she was just kind of linking it to Letterkenny. And I kind of looked at it. And for one, I'm never acted in my life, other than commercials when I played pro.
Sure. And
I just kind of looked at it and said, well, what the hell's Letterkenny? And is this a joke kind of thing? And, so I think I wrote back and said, I'd be interested, but, I need more information. And, but I ended up leaving on vacation. My wife's from, California. So I think I ended up leaving to our cabin in Lake Tahoe for a few weeks. And when I leave for work, I don't check my work email. I'm on vacation. So she had ended up writing me back, but I didn't see it and they wanted me to do some kind of,
screen test or
like a little read a little couple lines to them and videotape myself doing it.
Yeah.
I ended up missing that deadline. So I wrote back when I got back. I said, I'm really sorry for for not getting back to you. I was on vacation. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And, I said, thank you. And basically that was the end. And not even, a couple hours later, they wrote back and they said, no, we want you either way. So I didn't even have to audition. I just got, asked to come. So it was really cool. And, now that I'm part of the Shoresy family, unbelievable people, Jared Kiso is a wizard at what he does. Mm-hmm. It amazes me that he knows all his lines, which are the most, because he's obviously the number one guy there. But then he also knows all of our lines too, because he's the one that wrote it. So, and they welcomed us with, it was nice because a couple other hockey players, Jordan Nolan, won a Stanley Cup with the LA Kings.
Yep.
A couple of them actually. And then his brother, Brandon Nolan, played with the Carolina Hurricanes for a bit and, retired a little bit younger due to concussions, but being able to meet those guys who are also First Nation was awesome because we obviously knew of each other, but we never met each other in person. Mm-hmm. But to have those two guys there and a few other hockey players, it was just like being at home. We lived that hockey life, spent time in our hotel rooms and having drinks at night and going for, team dinners and stuff. So it was really awesome. And then, how the actors welcomed us too, they didn't expect too much of us,
Sure.
And I could still honestly say I'm the only guy that never read one of my lines the entire time. I didn't study, and I told him I'm not studying. I could thank Jordan Nolan for that. He would always study our lines, and he'd let me know what I had to say, and I would just say it.
Well, it's interesting because he gets the most lines, right? Like he always it's Jim, and then he comes in with like a little bit more of a push on his line. Me
and Brandon call him the nerdy Jim. He's always do you work out? Well, actually, he goes into a little bit more detail. Our roles were to play more of a simple role. But I always found mine harder though, to be honest, because I was Jim 1. So I was always the first. Jim 1. Jim 2 knew he was speaking right after me. Yeah. And Jim 3 knew he was speaking right after Jim 2, right? So I was the guy that had to pay attention to say, okay, we're up. So I did that. That's what I thought was hard for me because it was like, oh, but what Gerald, usually I would always talk to Jared Kiso, Shoresy, and that's how he was so good. He'd almost look at me and then I knew, oh shit, he's talking to me. It's time for me to say my line. So it was.
Now we talk about how you have this penchant for smiling in the middle of a fight. It seems like you've got a great sense of humor. But are you able to turn that off when you're face to face with a guy like Jared Kiso, who's just an outrageously funny human being? Are you cracking up at is that hard for you to get back into the mind of Jim 1?
Oh, 100%. There was times where Jared would say some funniest stuff and I would start laughing, but eventually I learned that, hey, we're shooting this, we can't laugh at it. So I would try to keep a straight face, but there were times where we'd have to sit and laugh and, or I'd screw up on a line or, but yeah, it was, and then, even the way I say, yeah, that was kind of, I don't know if you noticed on the TV show, I go, yeah, like kind of stupidly, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't even supposed to be like that. That was a joke because one night we were having drinks at Jared's cabin on the lake, and they asked me if I was studying my lines, and I said, not really, but a little bit. And they said, well, how are you going to say your line tomorrow? And I was, having drinks. I said, yeah, really. And Jared Key. So yeah, I think I was only supposed to say yes or yeah, like just simple. But Jared said, you got to say it like that every time now. And now I'm the, yeah, man.
You know what? I got to tell you. So I didn't know much about it. I heard Shoresy. I didn't know. I had never seen Letterkenny. When I heard Shoresy was coming out, I went back and watched Letterkenny. I can binge easy. I can sit on that couch for 10 hours and finish. I finished Shoresy in one night. Now it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, geez, there should be more episodes. But the writing that Kiso does in there is so intense. It must take him anybody else's time, maybe 2 or 3 shows they could do in what he can do one, because every line is perfect.
Very dense, very rapid fire. It must be a little bit intimidating, honestly.
One of the funniest shows I've seen in a long, long time. I went through that whole thing in one night.
Yeah.
Now, your involvement there, is that like you have to fight on ice and you have to fight on camera, and it's a very different thing fighting for the camera as opposed to
hitting the person
and not hitting the person. Are there any close calls? Do you have to pull your punches a bit, which I'm sure you're not used to doing?
I think Jared's got to get extra insurance the next time I'm there. It was funny because it is completely different. But what I really respected about Jared was, when we were doing the shows, he consulted with us a lot, especially myself in the fighting department, because obviously I've done that the most. But he was always open for discussion on, should we do this, or did that look real? Like, there's things that I would never do in a hockey fight that they wanted us to do. Right. And I just said, that doesn't feel natural. It's not, I would never do that. And then they would change it, Same thing in the dressing room, just by the way we'd hold our sticks on the bench. They'd like, well, how do you hold your sticks in pro hockey? And sometimes I'd have to stop and ask things that we do naturally. I'm like, well, I don't really know, but then, like the way our stalls were in a dressing room, like, where would you put your knee pads, So we really used the us hockey guys because I don't know if you know, but if you ever watch a lot of the good hockey shows, they're always kind of fake. One of my favorite shows is Youngblood, the old Youngblood. But when him and Racky fight at the very end at center ice, and that wasn't a hockey fight.
No,
it's not like you'd really do it. So what I really respect about Jared is he wanted to make it as real as possible. So he consulted with us a lot, and that helped a lot. But like you were saying earlier, Jared's a wizard at what he does, and it takes a huge skill set to do what he does.
I think he'd rather have you on set than a young Rob Lowe in Youngblood. Yeah, I think you may be able to bring a bit more to the table.
And then speaking of, about the injuries, it was funny because, we practiced a lot of fighting before we would actually film, and they'd always tell me, John, we only want you to go about 30%. So, but I didn't know what 30% was. I think I cut a couple of the stuntmen open, right?
Oh no.
Yeah. Just because I'd come in and I'd start throwing as fast as I could. And obviously I'm not trying to hit them, but I might slip them a lip or something. And
yeah.
So they'd always say, you got to go 30%, not 100%. And I said, well, I don't know.
Yeah, but you've already you've always gone 300%. So you were going to.
That is, you are taking it down.
Yeah. I don't know what 30% is, right? So that was kind of a joke. So I think Jared might be looking at extra insurance if I come back.
That might make sense. No, it's a fantastic show, especially for hockey fans out there. It does give me a lot of vibes of Slapshot, and the 3 gyms specifically kind of echo that of the Hanson brothers a little bit, almost as homage. Did you watch Slapshot in the day, and did you ever imagine yourself playing one of the Hanson brothers in a? That's
one of the stupidest questions you can ask me. Did I watch? I think every players watch Slapshot on the bus or something on the plane.
You got it.
Well, I got to tell you, Shoresy is comparable, at least comparable.
Yeah,
because the writing is even better.
I think you're going to be seeing. I know that the first one was only 6 episodes. I think it was more of a trial run to see how the audience bought into it. But from what I'm seeing, the reviews and stuff, it's. I think you're going to see a lot of seasons down the road. You
were saying too that Jared has always been a hockey fight fan too, so that kind of gave him a little bit of background on this. And I know we tried to get him a jersey of yours up there in time for the premiere or whatever you were doing up in Montreal, but it didn't get there in time. But he eventually got one.
Now.
yeah.
He was excited to have it. That's why he's very appreciative of that.
Well, hopefully we get another season of it. The 6 episodes just isn't enough to go out on. I do have one question before we're running a little bit low on time, but I do have one question that I'd like to throw your way, and it is related to Danbury as well. I can imagine, for you as someone who would have had such an integral role with the team when you were there and who fit the roster so well, did you feel a little bit left out watching the documentary? Not that it's anyone's fault apart from, whomever's putting the movie together, but did you feel a little bit left out? And if you were in it, is there one story that you think they would have had to have told that kind of sums up your time there?
Oh, there's 100 stories that could have been told, but there was actually talk that I was going to be on the documentary. I know they had reached out and stuff. I think with my schedule, I think we were having our elections at that time and I wasn't able to sneak away. And another thing is I wasn't really in Danbury as much as some of those other guys. I mean, I was more of I was brought in halfway through the first year, and I ended up leaving, a month or two in the second year. So I didn't really spend even a full season there. So that probably might have played a part too.
Sure.
Well, but I have tons of people write up and ask, how come you weren't in it? Numerous people. So I guess that's just their loss and not mine.
Well, you made a lot of the highlight reels, that's for sure. Because every time I turn on YouTube about the Trashers, there you are. Yeah, and just fights in general all over the place. Is there a fight that stands out in your mind? One I saw was the one with Paul Bissonnette where he calls the linesman off, which was a little bit of a surprise halfway through or calls the linesman to come break up the fight. Is there a fight that you have that either you're most proud of or kind of proud is a weird word, but that kind of sticks in your mind a little bit?
Shit, I've fought so much in my life, I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, I know Jeremy Oblonsky and I had some really good ones.
Are you a distant relative of his, by the way?
He's white and I'm Indian. What do you think?
Hey, look, there can be some mixing. I read somewhere it was unsubstantiated, but you were distant cousins. I don't know if that was true.
What happened was like when we first fought, way back when I first played in the American League, Jeremy and I grew up together. He's a few years older than I am. And I think it was our reporter in New York was talking to him, and I think he said, "Oh, Johnny's like my little cousin, right? Because we grew up together."
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, and then from there they said, "Oh, you're cousin," and it kind of blew up from there. So I
that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no bloodline there between him and I. I always joke and say, he's a white guy and I'm an Indian. How can we be cousins? But he's great guy, one of the toughest guys I've ever fought, and so. Good friend of mine, and we got when he was in Binghamton, I was in Syracuse. There, we got to have our wars on the ice. But then his wife and my wife and us, so we'd all go for dinner and walk around the mall and stuff together. So I think people got a kick out of that, but they don't realize that there's a lot of intensity going into those fights, right? Because we're from the same hometown. So he sure as hell doesn't want to lose to me, and I sure as hell don't want to lose to him. So there's a lot of pride on the line. So when people say they're staged or not, it's kind of stupid.
Yeah, look, we're running a little bit low, and I know that we can get into a ton of different stories that you have. And look, if you're ever willing to give us some more time and we can spend it just on some of those hockey stories, there were just too many interesting things going on in your life. I had to paint a more broad picture about your experiences there. And if I've learned one thing from Shoresy and from this interview, man, gyms are such fucking beauties. Gyms are such fucking beauties. Are you kidding me?
I'm getting those lines. I was walking in the airport in Phoenix last couple of weeks ago, and I still had my mohawk at the time, and I could hear someone say, "Hey, Jim," and you're a fucking beauty. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
We'll have a couple celebratory sticks at the end of this to mark a good thing. One last question to lead you out on. Okay. This is coming from me, someone who's barely ever played hockey and is probably useless in a fight. If I'm to put the skates on and I'm to go up against someone, what is the one piece of advice that you can give me so that I can avoid getting my ass kicked any more than I would have otherwise?
Grab both shoulders and tuck your chin.
There you go. Okay, that makes sense. And kiss my ass goodbye. Is that the last part of it?
You can control his shoulders by having your hands there, and your chin needs to be tucked, because I see a lot of these guys stick their chins out, and you're going to get a
way to go down.
Good way to go to sleep.
I just want to mention, because I got a little plug here. If you're looking for any of Jon's, now we're marketing Jon's autographed Trasher jerseys, which are a big hit. We've even got them in Cree on the back, and his name in the back in Cree, but we've got them with Mirasty on the back. And there it is there. And Jon's autographed a bunch, and we're selling those on
if you're
Frameworth.
watching over on on YouTube, you can see this over there. We've got one of the jerseys, not signed yet, this one, but we got the Danbury jersey over there. You can find that Frameworth.com.
It's a great looking jersey.
Very nice.
And I know, we've got all sorts of requests from celebrities. I know Drake wore one, and we've got Michael Gandolfini's looking to get some, and all sorts of country stuff. All these guys are contacting us because they want them on stage, etc. But yours is one of the most popular ones, and if you're looking for one of those autographed, go to frameworth.com, or you can go to the Trasher site, DB Trashers, and order them there. Or if you know John, I'm sure he'll get you one as well. He's got a few out there too. They're selling like hotcakes, so we want to make sure that we let you know how to get them.
John, anything else you're working on? Any plugs, website or anything you want to send people towards?
Not right now. I actually had a guy reach out. They want me to put up a website, but I'm not a computer guy. I kind of
there you go.
Like to rock and roll. That's about it, and get ready for doing some camping. So no, nothing. I just appreciate you guys having me on. It's been an honor, and hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. Well, we'd love to have you back on. Thanks again for all your time. And I haven't if I haven't stressed it enough yet, definitely check out Untold Crime and Penalties, favorite show of Frameworth's, myself and my dad included. That's on Netflix. And also absolutely check out Shoresy, phenomenal show, especially if you're a hockey fan. And even if you're not, 6 episodes, each of them are about half an hour. You can get through it in a day if you wanted to, and it's hard not to once you get started. Yep. But thanks once again for Jon Nasty Mirasty for joining us today. For Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, myself, Mikey Aaronworth, host of the Sign Off podcast. This is us signing off.
Thank you, guys.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions, executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!